What do you get when you mix dark fantasy, open world RPG, tons of monsters, loot, and quests set on a bleak island where everything is dying? Well, you get a brand new game with a very interesting history behind it. And that game is Tainted Grail, The Fall of Avalon. What started out as a board game and a Kickstarter campaign is making its way to the video game screen. But it goes much deeper than that. Welcome everybody to the Lumberjack Gaming channel, your place for friendly, quality gaming content. That's right, today we're going to be talking about Tainted Grail, The Fall of Avalon, which at one point was a Kickstarter campaign and a very successful Kickstarter campaign at that. So after combing through the information that we have, the trailers that we've seen, I put together a list of 11 things that I think are essential to know about Tainted Grail, The Fall of Avalon. So without further ado, let's dive on into it. Now, as I said already, this started off as a Kickstarter campaign in 2018. It was actually one of the most successful Kickstarters in 2018, with almost 42,000 backers and almost £5 million raised on a £40,000 goal. I would say they went a little above and beyond. And since its release, the board game has received massively positive reviews, so much so that it's gained a lot of traction for the video game that is releasing based on the story from the board game. This game is very heavily centered around Arthurian legends. The overarching story of Tainted Grail stretches over about 1,000 years, from the moment that Arthur led the people of the homelands to the shores of Avalon. This is an epic dark fantasy setting in which humans arrived at the island of Avalon in search of paradise, but only found the hellish land tainted by the weirdness, which is a mysterious force that is warping reality. And the story was written by one of Poland's best fantasy writers, this guy. Being Polish myself, you would think I'd know how to pronounce his name, but I'm not gonna do that, because I don't want to offend anybody. The more specific story is that King Arthur is long dead and all the myths and the legends are falling. Humans that are living in Avalon are desperately trying to find new ways of life and things to believe in. Not only are they dealing with the weirdness that we talked about earlier, but the plague of the Red Death. It's not a great time here. And while all this is happening, time is running out and multiple factions have their own plan for the future of this island. Now, that is where you, my friend, come in. Because while everything is getting really bad and the world is becoming unlivable, so basically Florida, you find yourself imprisoned in a damp underground cell. And when it comes to history, you are nobody. You're not anybody important. I'm sorry to break it to you. But I've got a feeling that you're going to become a somebody. Now, whether you learn how to cure the plague of the Red Death or figure out how to stop this weirdness, I don't know that one. But you basically crawl out of a damp hole and make something of yourself and maybe, just maybe, try to bring the lands back together. Now, when it comes to the actual specifics of gameplay, this is an open world experience, which means the whole world is your oyster. You can do it, you can find unexpected quests and adventures in every inch of this island, and you can roam around it however you see fit. And during your time in Avalon, you're gonna explore hidden caves, dungeons, you're going to be able to roam ancient ruins and travel through the weirdness itself, all the while putting the pieces together of the larger story that's at hand and maybe, just maybe, bringing some peace and some light to this horrible place. And because you're a nobody knows who you are able to customize your own character, and you can face enemies the way that you choose that fits your play style. Whether you want to focus more in on using bows and daggers, or maybe you just want to grab a giant steel sword, or even use forbidden rites of the druids, you have the ability to decide how you want to play. Also, while you are traveling the worlds of Avalon, you will be able to make friends and enemies. Now, whether that's finding simple commoners who need some help and you decide whether or not you want to help them, or facing battle-worn soldiers, fighting alongside them, or maybe even fighting them. And from what we've seen, we can maybe even expect to help some gods of the old. According to the development team, you'll have to make choices in the world in which there are no good answers, but your decisions matter and your choices are respected. You know, sometimes I leave the real world to not have to deal with making choices, but here we are. There are also trade, crafting, and cooking elements to Tainted Grail Fall of Avalon. So again, really toning into the type of playstyle that you want, you'll be able to go around the world, gather ingredients, and transform them into useful items. So whether you want to focus in on creating a bunch of life-saving potions or food, or you just want to trade your way up to some really cool gear that you can use to fight these creatures in Avalon. All of these elements are going to come together and they're going to better your survival chances in this very gritty, dark, mysterious world. Now, for any of you guys who are wondering what kind of experience does the studio have? Well, this is technically the second game from the Awakened Realms world. In fact, their first game was called Tainted Grail Conquest, which was actually a deck building card game that was based in the world of Tainted Grail, and on Steam for recent and all reviews is actually very positive, with a lot of people comparing it to something like Slay the Spire. And one of the most common things that I saw on the reviews for Tainted Grail Conquest was a lot of people really enjoyed the storytelling aspects of the game in general, which seems to be what most people are anticipating to be very good in Tainted Grail: The Fall of Avalon. While the graphics may not seem like something that you see from a current gen game, most people are very excited about the storytelling, and honestly I think the surrounding areas look pretty beautiful. Beautiful in like the creepy dark way, but very well put together in the atmosphere. You should also know that this game is going to be launching with early access, which I feel like most people probably know, but that means that they are still going to continue to be adding things to this game even when it releases. Now, while we should expect a pretty well put together product, that means that they're going to continue to be working on the game. They're going to continue to add content to it. So if you get it day one and you wonder, is that it? Well, maybe that's because the game is still technically going to be in early access. And speaking of its release, the game will be released on March 30th. So it won't be long before you're able to dive into the world of Avalon and slay some beasts and do some exploring, you know? And for all of you gamers out there, it is also a very key thing to know that this is right now, currently, a PC-only experience. So you'll be able to pick it up on Steam early access on March 30th to explore these lands, to craft, to fight, to forge, to explore, and all of the great things that come around that. As of right now, my first thoughts looking at the gameplay, reading up on the game, and actually looking into the board game and their previous game, Tainted Grail Conquest, I think the most exciting thing about Tainted Grail: The Fall of Avalon is probably going to be the deep story and the world building around it. As of right now, the gameplay itself, the combat itself doesn't look groundbreaking. I do think some of the areas look pretty awesome, but from what I'm hearing about most people who have been Tainted Grail fans for a long time, the story itself should be something that is worth checking out alone. Let me know in the comments below, are you excited for Tainted Grail? Are you gonna give it a shot? Or are you gonna pass on this one? Here at the Lumberjack Gaming channel, we are all about building a positive community of gamers who just wanna share their passion of gaming together. If that sounds like something that you're gonna be interested in, make sure to hit that subscribe button. I'm gonna be getting a copy of Tainted Grail when it comes out, so for a review when it hits that release day, make sure to keep it here at the Lumberjack Gaming channel for that. And for all your other gaming needs, check out these videos over here, and I'll see you in the next one.